Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 1 of season 4 of the R&D Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about stagnation. Let's get into it.
Let's get into this one. You know what? When we were coming up with this particular episode, I was mentioning to you that stagnation shows up in many different ways, whether you're married or you're in a relationship. So I think a lot of the time when you start to see stagnation, it has a lot to do with whether or not you're communicating, in my opinion, because oftentimes when you're first dating or when you're first married, you're trying to understand the other person. But I think that once you stop trying to hear, listen, or you lose respect for the person, you start to feel that you're kind of getting into that stagnant relationship, marriage, and that type of thing.
Isn't it funny, though, that some people will get married? I think women were more guilty of this. Getting married and entering into the relationship and expecting it to look and feel and sound like when we were dating.
Right.
I think that was one of the biggest eye-openers for me. I was a young bride. You guys know that story. But I know I was guilty of that years ago.
Yeah.
And so it was like, wait, why is it so different? Why isn't it, like, fun? Why isn't it playful?
Right.
And so it's really easy to think and feel that you're in stagnation. And really it's just like, welcome to marriage.
Right. You know what? I also have noticed that people that are either engaged or married, they sit there and we've done episodes of comparison is a death of joy or it's a thief of joy. There's so many ways that I've seen it written out, but I think a lot of the time, the comparison of whether or not this person's doing this and then you're not doing that and you feel like your relationship's not moving in the right direction, or marriage, it's because you're so focused on other people that you're not focused within, and understanding, like, what is our communication looking like? Are we communicating? Are we respecting each other? Are we loving each other? Are we respecting boundaries? There's so many different elements that come up, in my opinion, when we're talking about stagnation in itself. And oftentimes, we think that there's something bigger and better out there. So, you don't really hone in on the person that you're with, and you're like, well, what am I even doing with this person? If, you're on social media and you're getting direct messages from people that are like, what I wouldn't do to be with you. And you're looking at your person thinking, we're not growing here. We're not evolving. He doesn't love me. He doesn't tell me I'm pretty. There's so many ways that this shows up, in my opinion. And I think a lot of the time it's because I always say that life is kind of like playing tennis. Sometimes you got to serve the ball a couple of times and, get that stagnant water moving. And you got to be the one to do that. But oftentimes I think we're living in ego. We're egotistical. We're ego-driven. And I could say that for most people. And so sometimes we got to get that ball rolling. It's like, okay, maybe I'm expecting him to do this, but let me take the lead and let me try to get the ball rolling, as they say.
Yes, there's something that I recently shared. I was coaching somebody regarding leadership, and I was saying to them, if you fire an employee and they're surprised by it, you failed them. And the reason that is because that's an indication that you avoided conflict and that you didn't give them the opportunity to succeed and opportunity to rise up to what your expectations were or what your desires were for that person. So the same thing is true in marriage. So many times people, you'll hear men specifically that they'll say they're blindsided by the divorce. She filed for divorce and they were blindsided. And to me, I go, she failed the marriage. And the reason I'm saying that is because, taking away the context of, like, was there cheating and abuse and all that. But if you really look at it, it's like, are you being not vocal in a naggy way, but are you leading the way, like Delia's saying? Are you going, you know what, I'd love to go dancing with him. So then why not look up a salsa place, or why not look up a restaurant that maybe is a supper club and say, hey, babe, like, what do you think about this? Why does it have to always come from him, or what does that need? And I guess, like I said, I was guilty of it in the beginning because I thought it had to be like the dating stage.
Right.
But once you're married, it's the partnership.
Right.
So if he's busy trying to, figure out keeping the roof over the head, keeping you happy, maybe there's maybe you have kids, whatever the situation is, you might have to then be the designated entertainment officer and be okay with that and not resentful about that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that too. I also do think that oftentimes, again, you know, we're too busy looking out and we're not taking the initiative. And sometimes we expect the person to take the initiative, and I've seen that a lot more often than not too. And so I think it's just a matter of communication at the end of the day, whether that's in business, whether that's in relationships, marriage, I don't care what it is. If you have good communication, that's really important. Another thing is, in my opinion, I feel like if you're not bonding with your person, then you start to feel like, what's the point here? Oftentimes people start to feel like they're more like roommates than they are actual partners or lovers or whatever it is.
Because they get into like the routines, like the monotony, right, of the routine. Yeah. Like wake up, get the kids ready, feed the dog, go out, sit in traffic, and like
come back.
Text each other, by the way, 10 times a day. Come back and be like, oh, we gotta eat, clean, and like get ready for the next day. So it's really easy to fall into that. I saw an ad recently by someone. He's a very well known man, and he's selling these, like, he calls them the big ass calendars. And they're going viral and all this kind of stuff. And he says that he uses it to plan out his life. And then all the business and money-making stuff is planned after that. And so I think that getting very intentional about that, if this is something that's important to you, that you go, God, I miss the way we used to go on bike rides or hikes, or I miss that we used to do this, that, and the third. I think it's important to sort of sit together, even if it's once a month, and go, okay, how are we looking for next month? Like, let's go to dinner on this night. Let's drop the kids off at my mom this other night. Like plan your life and your relationship first, and then let all the rest come in afterwards.
I mean, I do know a few people that actually have a few kids, and they're driving them to the soccer, this soccer, park, and then the other, parent has to go here, and then they're literally having dinner as they're, commuting, and that's dinner, on the road. And so it's really hard for you guys to feel that bond, because it's, it's really important now. Like, what I've noticed is, like, stats have come out that it's so important for you to sit down and have dinner, with your family. But if you have these crazy schedules where you have to drive this kid to the soccer practice, this kid to, I don't know, maybe music, and this kid to dance, it's so difficult for you to actually come together as a family. But maybe if you don't have the games or what have you, and you see a little gap that, opens up maybe on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening or what have you, that you maybe kind of, calendar that in, so then that way you have that time, so you can kind of have rapport with not only with your children, but also with your spouse. And I think that that's so important. And again, we take it back to communication, because I think a lot of the time that's the reason why a lot of, businesses or relationships, or, if you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, or marriages, they get stuck. And I think it's because the water ain't flowing. It's just stuck, because you're not having that communication to say, what do we have to do to keep this moving?
Yeah. And I want to add that just because you have kids, it's not a reason to not sort of have a little bit of that dating energy in your marriage with the kids there.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, it's okay to do a candlelit dinner and the kids are there. Like, it's okay to do these nice things.
Rachel, hold up.
I'm serious. Like, I used to do that. So, like, I think that when you create these really beautiful moments, and it shows the kids, like, mom and dad, it's, it's Friday and they're doing this, like, really sweet thing. Or, like, get the kids involved. Like, if you're a man watching this, or you're a woman, and you can nudge your husband and say, have the kids help you, plan something like kind of romantic-ish.
Something cute.
And that way, like, for me, my sons went with me everywhere. If we went to Vegas, they came. Like, everywhere we went, we did so many things with them. And I think that as challenging as marriage can be, and mine was no different.
Yeah.
And I'm very vocal about that and stuff. Yeah. But, for learning purposes for you guys. But I think it's because it's important to go, the kids are not in the way. The kids are not part of the problem. And I think it's just time management and prioritizing and recognizing it. And there might be other parents that you can trade off with. Because I was a sports mom. So, like, there's other parents you can trade off with to say, hey, on Thursdays, do you mind doing the for you dance, or for me it was like football and basketball, and then, hey, Tuesdays I'll do that for you, or whatever else, getting together with the other moms and kind of figuring that out.
That's not a bad way to look at it. And I definitely didn't want to cut you off and don't want to get so controversial, but I do go to dinner quite a bit. And then, when I'm out to dinner and the kid's jumping over the table and he's doing this and he's doing that, and the kid's crying, now she busted out the iPad, and I'm like, to me, respectfully, because I've been there also, I've been that parent, believe me, I've done it all. I'm just like, okay, sometimes that's okay, but if that's the only way, then, you know, Rachel's suggesting to be like, hey, do you have a parent that you trust that you guys kind of can exchange kids, right? Because I think sometimes it's more stressful to go out to dinner than to just stay home.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying take them out to a romantic dinner. I was saying create a romantic dinner and have the kids help you plan it.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant to go out to dinner.
And I used to take my kids to 5-star restaurants and everything, because I do believe on the parenting side, you teach them how to behave.
That's so true.
And if you skip that part because you don't want the headache, you're going to pay the price in public.
That's so true.
So, you know, that's a whole other episode. But I will say, no, I was saying earlier, like have the kids, you know, help you play Cupid, and then they could help light candles in the house and create like a nice dinner, and they'll really love it. And so, you know, getting them involved, and then that way they can understand when mommy and daddy want to go and, you know, have the adult version or whatever.
Another child.
Fill the house, if you know what I mean. So other than that, I think that, you know, that pretty much covers, you know, some of the ideas of like what you can do if you feel like you're in a stagnant relationship. But understand, it's very normal. I think this whole idea of happy and everybody's chasing happy, I think that's a little bit dangerous.
It is.
And we have to just get strategic, unfortunately, and really think it through and plan things out and schedule things out and get creative with your kids.
It's so true. Amen. And if you don't have kids, and I mean, I think that then you're lacking communication somehow. If you really hone in on why you guys aren't communicating or why you feel like it's stagnant, maybe you're looking outward instead of looking inward, and oftentimes that's what happens. So I think that, you know, you really have to take all those things into consideration, leave your ego at the door, and maybe get that ball rolling and, you know, stir that water up so you're not stagnant.
What do they say? Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
It's like be that thing that you want to see in your own life and in your marriage.
True. Yep, and that's all we got. So, cheers.
Yeah, cheers.